Welcome to another episode of Elementality, everybody. I'm your host, Reese Harper, here with my co-host, Carl Richards. Carl, thank you so much for another great episode. I'm stoked for this.
Me too. Super excited.
I can spend hours talking to you and I just have a good time. I never get bored. You always have good insights.
That's very nice of you. Thank you. It's because you ask good questions.
Oh, well, I feel like it's been really good to get into this first set of, or the first topic that we covered last time, which was on kind of the main problem in the industry.
Yeah.
I think related to this is one that I know you and I care a lot about, which is we all feel like we are normal people that are struggling just like everybody else. But some of us have vastly different levels of income and wealth. Mm. And when you look at the pie of the marketplace, somewhere between 110, 120 million households, that are in the United States. The financial advisory marketplace has the solution, I think, for a lot more people than we actually serve right now. Yeah. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, no, I have spent lots of time thinking about other ways to solve this problem of how do I have a better relationship with money? How do I get the answers to the financial questions I have? I've checked on all the cool kids and their cool robo apps and all of that stuff. And there's the problem at the end of the day is that there is still this massive need for a human. Mm-hmm. And so once we get to this human at the center of it, we have a scale problem, which is what you're pointing to. Yes, the tool is there, the human, with all their tech, et cetera, but the challenge is we haven't been able to serve most of the market. Yeah.
It's interesting to me because there's not, if you look at, take therapy, for example, just take all the therapists in the U.S. and why don't they have a scale problem? I mean, they kind of do. I mean, therapists are very busy people.
Yeah.
But you can find a fairly reputable therapist at a pretty approachable hourly rate for most people.
Yeah.
And I think I at least in Salt Lake, I'm familiar with some of the data here.
Yeah.
You can find, varying levels of competency.
Yeah.
But the therapist job begins and ends in the meeting.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think there's something about financial planning, we need so much more than just a meeting. It's not, you can't have a 45-minute interaction.
Yeah.
And have it end up being really valuable on the other side because you need more information than just or we think we need more information or we feel the need to, we can't answer the question, right? And so I want to explore that problem a little bit because I think that's part of, we shouldn't have a scale problem if just talking to people was quick and easy.
It might be also underneath that too, may it also be that there just aren't enough good financial advisors.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely
right? It's sort of like a pilot, like the pilot problem. There's a shortage of pilots.
For sure. I mean,
there's a shortage of financial
and if
advisors.
There's 90,000 of the, let's just say 90 to 100,000 CFPs, and they each work with 70, 80, 90, 100 households, which we know it wouldn't be an average of 100 just because that's, most advisors don't have full books that are in that group.
Yeah.
Some are at least that. But let's just give it the benefit of the doubt and say there's 100,
Yeah.
Then that group can only service 10%, right, of the households. They could do 9 million. They could do 10 million households of the 110, So we do have a shortage problem.
Yep.
But I also know there's a ton of people that tried to go into financial advice, lots of people, and the failure rate is incredibly high. We're talking a 90% failure rate in the independent advice kind of space. So it's not, I don't know that, I think there's, a shortage of qualified advisors, but there's also a massive failure rate in people that are I really want to help. I would love to help. I mean, I want to talk to people.
Yeah.
So I think it's both the difficulty of turning it into a business and the shortage of humans.
Yeah. And we have to have a quick disclaimer because please, whenever you use specific numbers, and so I'm just begging those of you listening and those of you who are watching, I'm looking right in the camera. If you're not watching, I'm talking right into the mic. As soon as don't get confused about the problem. As soon as you mention specific numbers, people want to argue about the data and miss the point.
Okay.
And so I just want to have a big disclaimer that like Reese just used a bunch of numbers. Don't worry about the numbers.
He's probably wrong.
Yeah, who knows? That's not what I was saying. What I was simply saying was I could feel myself wanting to debate the numbers and realize, wait, that actually doesn't matter. It's why, I don't know if you noticed, but the behavior gap chart, the original graph of investor return and investment return, it used to have numbers on it. I took the numbers off after like a year because everybody wanted to debate whether the numbers were like, that doesn't matter. The point that matters. So the point here that matters is, look, there's a huge need for this service from a human to get answers to their financial questions, right? There's a huge need. Humans, we haven't figured out how to provide for that group of people at scale, right?
Well, we think we have a solution, Elements, but we haven't actually.
Sure.
I'd like to have the hubris of saying, I think I have.
No, and I agree. That's my hope is that using a tool like Elements will allow you to do it at scale. But
we haven't
to this
yet.
point.
No.
To this point, we're not talking about like the model of serving the wealthy client with one advisor having 100 clients. That's not broken.
No.
It's not broken at all. It's not. I don't even think it's going away. It's not. To me, it just helps us understand that there's a whole group of people you can't serve with that model.
Yeah.
And I actually was having a conversation with somebody on Twitter about this idea, and they said, well, financial advisors don't want to serve the people in the. I was just using 90%. I was like, look, we can only serve 10% of the market. So we said, well, financial advisors don't want to serve the rest of the market, the 90%. And that to me has not been my experience.
Yeah.
I bet most people listening to this have some sense of like, look, I want to make a larger impact. We've been talking for 20 years about how to go quote unquote down market, how to serve mass market. The problem isn't that we don't want to. The problem is that we don't have the tools.
Yeah. Well, a couple of numbers I'm going to pull from actual Bureau of Labor Statistics data that I'm looking at on my phone, just to help solidify kind of a little bit of shaping here.
Yep.
I think you can make the argument that there's a poverty line that Carl and I are not addressing in our conversation right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Like there is a place where we're like, I don't know yet how to solve that problem.
Yep.
And that to me, I'm just going to use the example today of anything under like 30,000 a year in income, which I think is generous of me to do that. I think there is probably some definite financial pain and questions that advisors can handle below that line. But that, if you take all of the households in America, I mean, that makes up like 24%-ish. Okay. So you have 75% plus of the market, well over half the market that are, 50,000 and up, right? You have almost that much that are 75,000 and up. I mean, it's half of the population is easily a target for getting some financial questions answered that would make a massive difference in their lives. I think 75% of the market is looking for answers to questions, and they're going to Google, they're going, to Twitter, they're trying to find Quora. I see that one out there. Ask Jeeves. Okay, there's still some of that happening, but Carl and I both feel like, again, like we talked in the last thing, this isn't an answers problem. It was never an answers problem, right? This is an emotional job to be done. This is a anxiety issue. This is a financial wellness issue, and those types of issues are handled best through human-to-human interactions. Yeah. And so if medical and finance are the American Psychology Association's top 1 and 2 pains of stress in America, I mean, look at medicine. How are they handling it? I mean, did telemedicine eliminate the doctor?
Right.
No. Right. Did hospital networks like stop having doctors have conversations with people? No. Right. Like, medicine can see, and people are demanding that personalized interpretation and counseling from their professional. The same thing is going to be true with money. It's just not a functional job. It's not just about the answer. Right. It's about this underlying emotional pain and anxiety that only a human can properly address. So let's just, as we talk about today, I'm just trying to emphasize we aren't even scratching the surface of this TAM. I mean, this market, for answer my question, it's massive. And they do have the pain. It's just we're taking the same thing that works for the top 1% and we're saying, let's just try to make it work for everyone else too.
Yeah. Well, let's hire more people. We'll throw more people at it.
Throw
we'll
more people at it. Pay less.
Yeah.
We'll just, we're going to keep doing it exclusively on AUM.
Yeah.
Even though AUM doesn't exist in the same quantity for that market.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it's interesting. That piece particularly, I've heard that comment so many times that people are like, I'd love to help those people, but there's no way for me to get paid.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a legitimate concern, has historically been a legitimate concern.
I think that is legit.
We're not talking, there is a difference between running a nonprofit and running a business. And I've always felt like sometimes I had to play that game of like, well, okay, fine, I'll do some of this work, pro bono work, and there's nothing wrong with any of that, and there's always going to be some need for that. But how do you can't do pro bono work for how many households?
I mean, we're talking 75% of the 120 million.
So the question becomes like, how do you serve that market in a way that is still human but scalable?
And that's what I want to kind of touch on today a little bit is I mean, I just spent the last 15 years of my life like building an advisory in a segment of the market that has the highest debt level of like any occupation in the professional community. I mean, dentists have far more than physicians, far more than lawyers. I mean, dentists are the highest DTI ratio of any professional. Their average income is not $300,000 a year. I mean, that's we'd like to target, in our firm people who have higher than average incomes, but the average dental income is still sub 200. And their average debt balance is well over $500,000.
Wow.
And so I'm targeting a market that doesn't have a lot of liquidity. Our average client was sub 40. I mean, they're in their 30s.
Wow.
Right. And so when I looked at that market and I saw the pain, I'm like, well, I can go target people that are 55 and up and go after a retiree model and go after the boomers and compete head to head with Fisher Investments, or I'm going to go after the blue ocean. No one's at these dental schools. No one's like going around the country speaking to these people in study clubs. No one is addressing these, 25 dentists in a room with their basic question about student loans. But how are we going to be able to like address the needs of that market?
Right.
Well, they don't have enough AUM. They're not going to build AUM. They've got a bunch of student loans. Like they got to pay these things down. So I'm just painting the picture real quickly of the same dynamic exists in a market of people making 180,000 that exists in the 75K market, which is a lack of AUM, a tolerance and a pain for answering a financial question.
Right.
So what are your options? Well, you can just, in today's world, luckily, it's starting to become a possibility to actually get paid, not just through AUM.
Right.
And I'm not saying that AUM is going to go away. I'm just saying if I say, well, we have an AUM minimum of 100,000, it's really going to make it very difficult for this customer to feel like I'm meeting them where they're at, right? Because they're like, man, that feels like you're just part of an industry that I can't be a part of.
Right.
If I say, no, it's a subscription fee, or I'll just charge you for answering this question. If I just address them where they're at by asking them to pay for a reasonable amount of my time, that's where they're at. That's where that market's at. That's where 75% of the households that we're talking about are at. They don't have the tolerance for a large planning fee. That belongs to the top 1%. And they don't have a tolerance for large AUM minimums. So you have to meet them where they're at. Now, I don't think that's rocket science to anyone listening, but we haven't figured out a way to do that profitably yet. That's where our problem is, right? Because the business model that we're delivering is still the same as what we were delivering to the top 1%.
Sure.
And that's like implied in that is like we're talking 12 hours of like implied work, 10 hours of implied work. Like we have built a business model for the top 1% that just doesn't translate down market.
Yeah.
So you have to fundamentally like reimagine how you're going to if someone has $300 or someone has $500, is it really like over the course of a year, or they only have $75 for 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the price is that your market, your niche in this new world will be able to pay.
Yeah.
Your question has to be, how can I do that less expensively than they used to do it in this other model? And that's where I want to keep innovating. But your thoughts on, that's a lot to throw at St. Carl.
No, I just think that's the challenge, right? How do we do that at scale, and how do we rethink? And anytime you start doing this rethinking thing, you bump up against this idea that like, look, I've got to do something new and novel. And as soon as I do something new and novel, there's no one to follow. There's no path. There's no, it gets scary.
That was super scary for me. Like just thinking like, well, does the market even want to pay a subscription fee that's this high? Or I don't know. And can I deliver anything of value? Is that the right frequency? Is that the right cadence? Because financial planning really isn't kind of like this monthly thing. Yeah. It's more, infrequent, and it was so really scary.
It's so interesting, right? We have built, and again, it's not that it's broken for the market that it was intended to serve. It's working great.
Yeah, it really is.
But the idea that we all say this at conferences, we all say it individually. I know, talking to all my favorite financial planners and advisors around the world, they all, even if they've been super successful, especially if they've been super successful, they say like, well, wait, how can I have more impact? How can I serve more people? How can I make a bigger difference?
Yes.
So that idea of being able to do you at scale requires you to rethink how you deliver it. And I mean, I think the good news is like we can look at all sorts of interesting models, like membership models that you've seen. There are ways to do this for sure. In fact, I remember having a conversation with a venture capital friend of mine, and I was like, I have to say no to 8 out of 10 people who contacted me. This was after the book had come out. I was getting all these emails. I was like, 8 out of 10 people who contacted me I have to say no to. And he's like, why? So because it's not profitable. And I was walking him through the line for profit, like what I meant by not profitable. And he was like, because the margins were some crazy, it was below a 50% margin or something. And my venture capital buddy was like, well, you guys run businesses that like a 30% margin doesn't make sense. Yeah. You look at like, I always think of Superhuman, the email app, as they used to do 15-minute demos before you could buy an email app that cost you $15 a month. And then we think, well, we can't build a membership model that works at $29 a month, $49 a month, $170 a month. So I think it's just interesting to realize, like, look, there's a huge problem. It's not getting better. Like pounding on it with the same tool that you use, that's like saying, I'm a brain surgeon, I'm going to operate on this knee with the same tools as I do on the brain. Like it's maybe a terrible analogy, but we're trying to use the same. It's not that those tools aren't perfect for the job they were intended to do. It's just they don't do this job very well.
I'm hesitant to jump into the different ways that we've explored solutions here in this episode, just because I think I wanted to focus this one on just the TAM, the size of this pie.
And by TAM, just make sure you understand.
You're right. I'm into venture capital speak.
Yeah.
Total.
That's almost like a ding dong. I think a TAM. Do you have a TAM?
Yeah,
a TAM. That's what it is. A TAM in Australia, I think, is anyway.
The TAM is the total addressable market of a product or a service. So when you look at your opportunity set, out there, if you're what the biggest impact businesses do is they try to figure out how to architect a product that meets the largest group of consumers possible, right? You start with a niche, you kind of scale from there, and then continue to go out. I think for a lot of people, really high income niche businesses are a great way to, get your business off the ground. And you've been the beneficiary of, running a business that way. I've done the same thing. I think I've done it a little bit differently. People assume that I'm working with just the oral surgeons, just the orthodontists, but that wasn't the biggest market. When I looked at the dental market, it's, orthodontists make up less than 5% of the total market, and oral surgeons are even smaller than that. And those are the really high income, kind of sexier income levels. But really what made our business work was that instead of saying, we started out saying specialists, like dental specialists, because we wanted to really target the highest income group. But what I found was just if I could build a product and a service that addressed the average Joe and make it profitable, like we could get a lot more. We could have a lot more impact and grow a lot deeper, and actually not have the cost of customer acquisition be so high.
Yeah.
You know, and because to get a dentist who's struggling, who has major financial pain and doesn't have a lot of AUM to say yes, it's a lot easier than going. And my conversion rate on that sale is much higher than if I go to sell an orthodontist who's got super high income and he's got 10 people pitching him, and he's already got a great financial advisor. He's got anyone he can pick from. Like, my conversion rate on that client is going to be lower. And so I think that the message here isn't to, like, you know, at all costs work with people who can't, you know, who can barely afford a service.
Right.
It's to start thinking about whether, you know, you can really question, you know, whether the advice you've been given of building a business around the highest incomes, most scarce, you know, people you can find is really the right plan. Because, I mean, there's 50 people probably within 1 mile of you, you know, who would die to talk to you today about a financial question they have.
Yeah.
But we have to rethink and reimagine the way we're addressing this giant market.
Yeah. And to me, that's the important takeaway. At least for me, the way I was thinking about this was that most people don't need most of what we think of as our product offering. Right? Only a small group of people needs that. And so when we start to think like, well, I can't serve this group, you're like, wait, that group doesn't need, it's not planning light, it's right-sized planning. Right? It's planning that's fit for purpose for that group of people. Yeah. And it turns out that there are simpler questions. It's that most of the population, I don't need the service that most financial planners deliver. So
that's because you live in the mountains, dude, and you're all by yourself, alone in a tent.
Eat twigs and small animals. So yeah, but I'm just simply saying that to me is the distinction. Is like, this thing that we're doing is not broken.
Yeah,
it's not bad, and the evidence is clear. Like, there's so much demand for that because there's a shortage of advisors. It's like when I go to try to find a home I get this inquiry all the time. Like, the last two have been like between $10 and $25 million. I'm trying to find an advisor. Like, it's actually hard for me to find the right kind of advisor because many of them are saying, look, I don't have room for that, or it's not in my niche, or, well, there's a reason for that. That's not broken. But man, when I go try to find help for somebody like a normal human that makes up most of the population, it's really, really hard. And it's because this set of tools does not work for the group of people. So we just need to rethink that.
It's a big pie out there, everybody. The last thing I'd end with here is
big pie of opportunity, revenue, and most importantly, impact.
Yeah. And that's what I was about to say. Yeah. You jumped to my conclusion.
I just wanted to make sure.
So what I was going to say was, I just feel like all of us got into this business to make a difference for the person that was most in need. You know, I had an exchange with a prospect who's now in my Elements app, and I am working through my conversion rate. Hopefully going to land this prospect. It's just a PT that's working on my low back. And we had a financial interaction when I was getting my one wheel wreck straightened out. Yeah. And it was so interesting to see how big of an impact I'm able to have inexpensively and with the right technology and the right interaction. But the fulfilling part of it was just feeling the relief that this person felt by just getting an answer to their question. Totally. It's just amazing. I mean, the impact is just astronomical. It is. I would say you'll see it, you'll feel it, you see it in their eyes. It's a bigger impact than the one where someone has hundreds of thousands of discretionary income every year. Yeah. Just because the person with plenty knows they can buy their answer. With the right price. Right. This person that you're helping in this 75% of the market, they've never had someone actually take them seriously and address them at where they're at. And I think we just have a huge impact that we can make as an industry. Totally. And it can't be done without humans. I mean, we need all of you listening to do it, you know, so. Anything left to leave us
just
today?
Have to say amen. Amen, Reese.
Amen to that. Carry on, everybody. Look forward to seeing you next week.